Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Expanded Understanding. It's Saturday, I suppose, because it was just Frank's show. What a weird time in the world, right? We got comets, we got like six planets in retrograde. Several of them are major and don't happen very often. There's been eclipses recently. Apparently, we've recovered off world vehicles. Uh, you know, 2020, I think, is going to go down in history as the year where anything could happen. And that's why I spend most of my time focusing on what I want to happen, not any time worrying about what's going to happen. I spend the entirety of my time ensuring that my own energetic vehicle is pointed towards creating the reality that I want to live in because I believe we're currently in a position of confusion and I really like states of confusion because in states of confusion anything can happen. You have no idea what the outcome's going to be. And I very much so believe we functionally operate inside of a shared hologram. And when we're inside of that shared hologram, we kind of, well, you study like Rupert Sheldrake talking about morphogenetic fields, Buddhists with the big mind, Hindus with the Akasha. All of these kind of insinuate some kind of connectivity in thought that can be recognized in the same form at the human level. If this is the case and these things exist and we are a collected consciousness, then in certain ways the projection of this dimension seems to most likely be functionally a shared projection. And it seems to function that way in, well, in basically everything. You hear a lot of like colloquialisms, cliches, adages passed around in various different places, such as the idea inside of kind of like the hustler entrepreneur mindset of that like you should be, kind of like moving in silence, making your moves, doing what you need to do for the future, but not really talking about what you're going to do. Talk about what you have done. And there's a lot of good reasons for doing this inside of that space. And really just kind of all over the place. And it definitely is deep inside of the concept of certain kinds of witchcraft and other types of esoteric practices that it's in your best interest to kind of, well, only display the cards that you need to display. And I think that's very good in terms of that when we're in a place of confusion, the shared hologram is very, very flimsy. Like when no one has any idea what's going to happen, then the future is not very solidified in that position because everybody's questioning a lot of probabilities. This gives us an interesting space to work as, whatever we want to consider ourselves, light workers, source beings, budding magicians, alchemists. It doesn't really matter. All of them share a lot of similarities, and inside of this space is kind of a space where they should be really excited in many ways to be, because it's a place of many possibilities. At certain points in time in the world, we seem very structured into like you can kind of tell exactly what's going to happen in the world over the next several years. But I don't think anybody would feel very confident with their prediction of even 2021 if they were trying to guess where it was going to go based off of where everyone else in the world took it, because there's just so many alternative viewpoints, so many things coming to light. Just a simple amount of how many people are questioning basically what they're being told by the media, what they're being told by the government, these kinds of things is likely to cause a pretty dramatic shift in the way that society operates. And I mean, whether you think that that's orchestrated or it's just a natural occurrence or you think it's all part of the process or, either way, it's likely to create a dramatic change in the way that society operates. But I don't think anybody really knows what that change is going to look like. And I think if we take the time to really look at the possibilities of parallel realities, multiple realities, these kinds of things, the concept of infinity as it pertains to the space in which we could have an experience, basically. If we start to dive into that concept, then there certainly becomes a question that seems impossible given the scale of it to really get whether, we don't know whether this is true, but there's a conceptual hypothesis that if we do live in a space of infinite realities, then all possible realities are coexistent inside of that space. If that is true, then we have to ask the question, which realize we're already in an assumption axiomatic hole right here. But if that is true, then how do we choose which reality that we're in? If they're all taking place right here, then there's got to be some type of selection, right? Like it's unlikely, especially if you believe in yourself to be a sovereign being or you even go to the level of believing in free will, that I mean, honestly, like if you can decide to not go to the bathroom instead of decide to go to the bathroom, it kind of insinuates that you get to choose which reality you live in the next moment, because one continues sitting where you are and the other one is in the bathroom. And as a byproduct of that, it seems that through functionally our choices, and I think a lot of our choices happen on basically as just a thought form. They're not really actually a choice of an action, but rather a choice of a perception, which oftentimes is even just unconscious, and it kind of sculpts how we perceive something or what possibilities or potentials we perceive based off of kind of that, we'll call it a timeline of that object. This is a subjective timeline, and it sculpts basically what we can see. Uh, Nevertheless, the point is that I think there is some kind of function that we can utilize to basically navigate ourselves into the reality of our choosing. Yes, you could also just go to the bathroom where you're sitting. That's there's the playfulness of the infinite realities. I think it's actually very very good that you bring that in. I have a tendency to like look at everything so structured and serious, when it's like there's also this humorous side to it, and maybe something that's just funner. And like in my own personal life, where we're talking about the structuring of conditioning that oftentimes is taking place unconsciously, like, well, when I was younger, I was much more apt to just kind of like see the fun in something and just be doing it because it's fun. In my Where I am now, which I don't really actually feel that much older, but it's many years later, supposedly, there's this position where oftentimes I find myself just kind of unconsciously, before I even really react to the concept of some way of thinking or something to do or whatever, I already have this kind of equation running in my mind of basically like, what's the value of doing that? How worthwhile is it to do this thing that the person is bringing up, or that is even like just a conceptualization that I have in my own head? And in certain ways, that can be, very, very problematic, because I don't just like do it for fun. Your life is very much so balanced, I think, in around like one side you could say fun, and the other side is kind of like work. It's like what you need to do to sustain your life, and then the having of the life that you're sustaining. And you could kind of consider those fun and work. So at least one side is responsibility, and the other side, I mean, if you want to balance out one side having responsibility, then ideally that side wouldn't have as much responsibility, maybe. And I have a tendency to put too much responsibility on both sides, so I have to be very mindful of giving additional value to the idea that just like that would be enjoyable. So, to circle the wagons back to where I was, I think there very much so is a function by which we can navigate to the reality of our choosing. I think this happens on multiple dimensionalities, but it has a huge effect in our own life. And then as a byproduct of, the kind of the culmination, the sharing of a hologram of many, many perceptions, it has an effect on an even bigger scale. And I think that scale continues on. But from a human level, there's really not a lot of reason to talk about anything beyond that, because that's like our environment and our experience. I think we need to be more mindful of choosing where we're going into the future. And I think we have always known this. I think that's why we have such a prevalence on anxiety. I think anxiety and the rise of it in the modern day, especially in Western culture, is a direct byproduct of us kind of gaining access to a new format of consciousness where we're more capable of forward looking and discerning what location we're trying to get to. The inevitable byproduct of being able to see out into a place like the future, where there are all kinds of potentials and nothing that is solidified, is that you will potentially find yourself looking at all the things that could possibly go wrong. This is actually kind of inevitable if you're looking at ourselves as an evolving organism that basically, it came from, it was a bunch of atoms, and then like, we got single-celled organisms and da-da-da-da, and oh my God, humans, right? Even if we're not doing that, we would say that we definitely are a survival-focused organism. We care about eating, we care about breathing, we care about not being in the elements, etc. And as a byproduct of that, we're coming from this space of like survival minded. But when we're very forward thinking like that, and we're recognizing that we can take ourselves to any potential that we want, the mechanic changes. It's no longer what you have to do. It's really just like the way you want to do it. But we have a hard time making this transition because they are really functionally polar opposites of one another. And I found in my own personal life that I actually feel a lot more comfortable doing what I feel like I have to do than just what I want to do. It adds kind of like this, well, it's a drive from behind me rather than a pull from in front of me. I'm not as susceptible or maybe resonant with at this point in time. I'm attempting to get better at that because I'm noticing the value in it more and more every day, at being pulled from the front, or basically what was the old study of eschatology, the idea that there's a future that's kind of pulling us into it, or some formats of eschatology look at it more as like a pre-discerned future. Realize even if it's a pre-discerned future, I mean, like, who the fuck is doing the discerning? Perhaps you are the discerner. You know, like, if you are truly divine, then should you not be capable of divination? And divination is looking to the future to bring forth some kind of sublimation where you basically project your thoughts or your will into the future, and you can either see a timeline, but the idea, I mean, like, the phone lines go both ways, guys. Like, if you're divinating to the future and seeing a different timeline, you can just discern from that thing's past everything that it required to get to it, bring that back to your current state. You've done completely normal divination, not thinking outside the box at all here, but what you divined into was a space where you can just, like, now you know fucking step by step what you're supposed to do in order to get to the place. And I think you would always know this if you weren't so busy, like, looking at several different possibilities. When we focus into a single possibility and we really allow ourselves to come into resonance with this, I think a lot of people are going towards this with the idea of, like, coming into your heart space, really checking in with yourself and seeing what you want. The whole value of that is that it keeps you aligned to a singular variable that is functionally what you're calling yourself you, even though that variable is malleable. We see that in every single level of the human experience, that change is basically inevitable. So that thing is malleable, but at least it is, everything's malleable in this reality. It's just a question of, like, how quickly can it be changed. So inside of this situation, by setting that static variable, we come into some format of focus. And, you know, some format of focus is better than no format of focus, for sure. And, like, a disparate focus is functionally no focus. Even if it's, if you're focused on two things, you're technically not focused on anything, right? Like, you have a split focus. So when we choose a singular thing to focus on, which can be a point in the future, it can be a thing you want to be, it can be a goal you have, a dream, it can be what your heart's telling you in the moment, it can be what your higher self says, it can be what the Bible told you to be. It literally doesn't matter. When you focus in on one of these things, you start pathing towards that thing. The information that you need in order to accomplish that flows to you as a backflow of this eschaton that you're projecting into the future. This eschaton in the future is, realize, it's living in a space of infinite potential. People oftentimes have, like, this argument over, like, whether, anything is real. Is this real? Is that real? Oh, I don't believe in that. I do believe in that. If we believe in the concept of infinite realities or of an infinite experience, then all of these are equally true, and they could even be subjectively true. But inside of this consensus space here, if they don't share a high enough contingency that is giving energy to those, then it's not a thing that will basically be beyond critical mass, and it will not be naturally reproducing itself. It will rather be what we understand as a phenomena at that point in time. Seeing a Sasquatch or whatever would functionally be a phenomena at this point in time, when really, like, the whole concept of a Sasquatch is, like, basically a big monkey. Like, we really shouldn't be that surprised at the potential that something like that could exist. But the way that it's been postulated makes it seem something that, like, is not accepted as easily to the consensus reality. This is kind of like a big thing if you're on the format of creation, if you're trying to create in this space here, because it is a benefit to you to take into account how other things are perceiving this same space. And that can be managed in a lot of ways. And this is kind of at the core of many of the more closet types of esotericism, is that you do things out of the eye of other people. And that, minimizes the size of hologram that you're trying to generate basically this thing into. And once it gets to a place where, like, a decent little chunk, like, it's like a cult belief, like just a small group of people believe it, it's much easier to impress that thing upon, or stabilize that thing inside of the shared hologram, than it is just like the musings of a single person. So it's easy for one to become two, but for one to become a thousand is pretty difficult without it becoming two along the way. So it's better that it works at the dimensionality that it's working at. Oftentimes we actually utilize this mechanic against ourselves where we will function like we have an idea. We're real psyched on it. We actually do want to do it. And we catch ourselves like going out. We're so psyched on it. Every conversation that we get into, we're telling people what we're going to do. And we don't really realize that we're taking a bunch of the motivational energy from actually doing that thing, and we're already putting it into the experience, but we're basically spending it on telling people a story about a thing that we're going to accomplish in the future. While this does have benefits of establishing some type of eschatology or firming that up, if we do this too much, then we end up in the position of basically the Aesop's fable. Well, if we do it too much without being then following through on it, which is oftentimes the case, we end up in the old Aesop's fable of the boy who cried wolf. And when we start coming to the townspeople and telling them that there's a wolf, or I have some idea that I'm going to create, their projection onto the shared hologram is to look at that situation and say like, well, no, you're not. Like, you always come back here with these grandiose fucking ideas, but you never do any of that shit. So really, it would be better for you to keep that to yourself at that point in time, because by sharing it with them, you're actually getting a negative influence on it. It would be more functional for your creation to ensure that you were basically sharing that data or the information that you were doing that with ways that actually worked towards creating it. Now, in both cases that I've postulated there, one of them, the second one that I postulated, basically when you give it to them, they're actually diminishing the energy inside of it, because they're saying like, no, that's not actually going to happen. And maybe they're not saying that to you, but they're fucking thinking it. They're projecting it into the reality. At the next layer of that, you're just, the first example, you're just utilizing the energy to tell people a fucking story about something that hasn't happened yet. The really more effective way of doing it is, instead of telling the story, and instead of ever becoming the boy who cried wolf and having people actually be like, nah, you ain't never fucking doing that, is to actually just keep that shit to yourself, basically. Or like Kevin's saying here, that's why I shut the fuck up, is rather like work on it at your own and let your, you know, like let the things speak for themselves. But you'll actually find that you, in a sense, have an easier time speaking. It's easier to create things, not only because you have more energy with it, but because you don't ever have to hear naysayer opinions. You don't get any kind of negativity projected onto your creation before it is ready to actually handle that. Realize it's kind of like a baby, right? Like, it's all right if your kid gets in a fight when he's like 15, 16 years old or whatever, especially if he's been like, you know, raised to take care of himself. I'm not saying kids should go around getting in fights, but I'm saying, you know, like, oh, they take a knock or whatever, they get in a fight. It's one thing then, but you're not going to like, you know, send your fucking 2-month-old kid into the gulag. Same thing with your creations that you're generating metaphysically. Look at it more like a child, and realize that in the early days of it needs to be nurtured, and it benefits from not having just like any old motherfucker know about it, only having people that are actually going to positively benefit its life, because it is in a very, well, I mean, it's very impressionable in the beginning, but then also on top of that, it's also fundamentally weak. Like, if too much energy gets projected on it that says that that's impossible, you're working against this energy as a functional, it's a resistance to what you're trying to generate. And it's really better just to like, well, do it out of sight, you know, out of sight, out of mind. Well, if we're all big mind, then as long as you keep it out of other people's sight, then functionally you're invisible, and they can't project that shit onto there. So that's very beneficial. This is kind of just like a huge rant on creation, but it's really all a rant on creation, because I think the number one thing to do at this point in time is keep yourself locked in, focused on where you're trying to go, and recognize yourself really as a light vehicle that is projecting itself through realities. The experience that you're having, whether it's emotional or whether it's environmental or whether it's societal, it literally doesn't matter. This is actually a reality that you have, for one reason or another, projected yourself into. If you hate that about yourself, just forgive yourself. It's not a big deal. Don't focus into that, because it's more important to focus towards the thing that you do want and not be in this space anymore. Sitting there focusing on that you haven't done good enough, or that you're not doing it right, or that you fucked up in the past, or that your past is holding you back, or some shit like that, is the whole reason why you may ever be in this situation. Just stop. And, you know, forgive yourself for that. Recognize that you're building on top of that. That's the launch pad for what you're trying to do. And find ways to basically get focused. This is like a primary thing that I work with my clients, is figuring out how to focus in on exactly what they want. Sometimes that's exactly who they want to be. Sometimes that's exactly where they want their business to be, exactly where they want their finances to be, exactly where they want their brand to be. I work in a lot of different ways with that, but it's always about making sure that it's fucking laser focused. Like, if you want to project your light, whether that's your message, whether that's your life, whether that's whatever your dreams, You need to focus that shit in and put as much energy behind it as possible. That's how light projection works. You can study all of this through the science of lasers. It's not a conceptualization. If we're light, if we're all energy, we functionally work like a laser, and accomplishing our dreams is functionally a projection to a different state. And we're trying to get to that state with the highest format of energy retained and thus the least amount of energy lost in the process. That's the efficiency of movement that we seek inside of yoga, that we seek inside of efficient business practices, that we seek inside of efficient relationship practices, be it with ourselves or with our loved ones. It does not matter. In every single place, we're looking for efficiency of movement. If you believe that at our core we are truly all energy, then recognize the one thing we can guarantee about energy is that it loves efficiency. If you give it two paths to go and one path is more efficient than the other one, you can guarantee that it's always going to go the way that is more efficient. When it has a more efficient way to go, it basically only has one way to go because it prefers to take the path of least resistance. If you can find a way to focus what you're trying to do and not provide resistance to that, you will find that you accomplish significantly more, honestly, with significantly less work. As kind of crazy as that sounds, oftentimes we've heard this colloquialism of like work smarter, not harder. One of the big ways of working smarter is to focus your fucking energy in the right place. This is not the stuff that they share in your like $1,000 business course, we're gonna get your shit together. This is the shit that fucking like billionaires have beat into their head just by the way that they're raised and the ways that they are taught by everybody that's in their family around there, where they know that they have the resources to create the future that they want. There is a strong belief inside of that consensus hologram that that is very possible, and thus they are more trained at doing that. This is not some information that is locked to them. This is something that we can all train ourselves to do. I came from the fucking slum. Like, nobody wanted to give that shit to me. I'm not supposed to know about that shit. I was supposed to die on a street corner at 21 years old. Didn't happen. I'm here getting shit done. Very, very high functioning individual. And a lot of it is because I chose to learn how to focus my mind. That was luckily brought to me when I was very young through the ideas of Buddhist meditation, very much so through Vajrayanic Buddhism, which kind of made it more holistic. Like it was my whole life and all the applications to it. And it was something that I could be doing all the time. Then also on top of that, I was very lucky to be introduced to the Monroe Institute and the technologies that they had discovered through their experimentation in the late 60s, 70s, 80s. I mean, like they still operate now, but like it was primarily they were developing these technologies then. Nevertheless, the culmination of all of these things comes together and basically, well, in the way that I work, it's basically a service that helps to focus in on that. There are specific ways to train that. There's ways that we can be training it like all the time. And there are practices that we can take on. There are ways that we do the normal things that we do. But beyond all that, I urge you, even if it's just something that you're completely doing on your own, learn how to focus yourself. Learn how to cut out distractions, especially with the rise of the internet. This fucking world is filled with so many distractions. It's crazy. Like, it's insane how much shit is going on. As I'm saying that, I can hear outside my headphones. I'm like in an isolated reality here. I'm in a building focused on this thing, got headphones on, and I can hear outside like a car all loud that distracts some of my attention. Fuck that. You got to learn how to block it out. You got to learn how to become aware of that was the potential of a distraction. That's not what I'm fucking doing right now. I'm going to shut that thing down. And maybe even in the case of this right here, you'll see, well, this is basically how, when you're operating with it at a high level, turn it into what you are fucking doing. Like, don't allow it to be a distraction. Take it as energy coming into the reality, transmute it into the experience you are trying to have. If your lens is focused enough, it does not fucking matter what kind of light or what color it is that comes through it. You focus it at the fucking angle that you want, and you take all that fucking energy, you collapse it in, and you push it out as a fucking stream of clear light going directly out of what you want. It's literally just the opposite of a prism. A prism splays light. It gets into colors. You think you have 7 chakras. You think they look like a rainbow. A rainbow is a byproduct of the prismatic function of fucking water droplets in the air. We are in a reality where the light is splayed. If you want to understand how to do amazing things inside of the reality, learn how to invert the function of a prism. Many people have been trying to tell you this. Pink Floyd was trying to tell you with the dark side of the moon. Fucking everything that we learned through spectrography is basically telling you this. The entirety of the information based off the concept of the looking glass experiments carried out by the CIA and the Navy and many other people inside of this world, it all speaks to the same thing. You're inside of basically something that shifts light. If that's the case, then focus and efficiency are like the most important things to you. And it's not a fucking game. Like it's your life, dude. It's your experience. You want to be all the things that you talk about or that you hear about or that you aggrandize or have the experiences that you want. Focus your shit and be efficient. You will end up there. You will end up places that you can't even fucking imagine right now. Like your goals are going to be malleable all the time. If you learn how to focus really good, you'll find that you start knocking out really fucking huge goals really fucking fast. And when you do that, you start knocking them down. You start even getting more motivation. They start going even faster. Next thing you know, you're like fucking 5 years down the road and you're like, wait a minute, the thing I'm trying to do right now, I never would have even imagined doing this. Like, what the fuck am I doing? My life is so weird now. And you're fucking pumped on that because it feels novel. It feels exciting. If your energy, again, you also don't want to be stagnant. You want to basically be excited. You want to be doing something. Energy doesn't like to be destroyed or stopped. It likes to keep moving all the time. This is the whole basis of all the cyclical things and spiral things and everything. Energy likes to keep moving. So don't allow yourself to stagnate. Focus. This is where everybody gets caught up. They focus, but they focus the wrong way. They're like, they get all trapped. That is the oppression of your infinite capability that is holding you into that trap. I assure you, nothing can trap you but you. It's fucking impossible. When you realize what you really are, you'll realize there's no fucking way anything besides me put me in a trap. It's not possible. It is not possible. You are literally the trap. That's the only way. You all these things you hear about, entities, all this stuff, you trap all that shit. That shit gets facilitated and substantiated into existence by your perception of it. You're the trap. You're the thing that makes it possible. Just don't forget that you're shifting the light. Focus. Be efficient. It doesn't really matter what you focus on. You could focus on your heart. It's a good way to go. Like you'll find that it's a pretty pleasing experience. It is as though you found words for really subtle thoughts I have been having. Thank you for the reminders. Laser focus for manifestation. Protect your ideas and dreams. I agree with you on all points but one word, the protect one. You do not need protection. You are an infinite being. You can't be hurt. You make this place. The protection is a way that we resist our creations. We basically put a sheath around them and we limit them. We put weight on them. Then they require more energy to push because instead of me just taking the next step, I have to also make sure that all of these protections are in place. Unless you're talking about protection in the sense of just don't bring it into the reality. Like I think that's a good look. You don't need to tell everybody like every single fucking move that you're making. You can speak conceptual about virtually anything. In fact, generally lead to more learning for yourself. So sometimes I find it's very good to instead speak conceptually. Oftentimes it will spark more ideas in the other person than just telling them about your idea. Nurture, I'm all about that word, definitely. Nurture your ideas and dreams. Honor the shit out of them. Honor them so much that you focus on them all the time. Understand, like you're making them. They're your little baby. That's you in the future. You're raising it right now, and you're never going to not be raising it. All the time, you are raising your future like a little child. And the amount of love that you give to your future in the present will determine how that child grows up. And you're going to be that fucking child. So who do you want to be? Be the parent to yourself that you would like to have for your future. Recognize you're always 1 day old. You cannot prove to me that when you go to sleep that you wake up exactly the same and that it's actually you. It's actually impossible to prove. We have no fucking idea what happens when you go to sleep. You come back in the same body. You feel some kind of continuum. But nevertheless, there's no reason to forget that you're raising yourself all the time. Like, you are the thing that's going to get you to your future. You're the vehicle, So, like, honor the fuck out of that. Like, respect it. And respect it means like give it the treatment that it needs, like don't self-sabotage basically is what I'm saying there. And I know that's fucking lot easier said than done, But if you manage this focus, you will find that you actually see significantly less opportunities even to self-sabotage. You get good enough at the focus, every time one of these distracting self-sabotage mechanisms comes in, you'll notice it as an interloper or as something that's not supposed to be there almost immediately. You'll be like, why is this thing trying to direct me off course? Like, I'm trying to go this way. Why is that pushing me? Even if it's a very subtle push. If we get very distinct in what we are trying to create, and when I say that, I will probably add some caveats after this, or I'll tangent off. When we get very distinct about what we're trying to accomplish, then we notice more easily things that are not the same as that. The human mind's awareness is basically leveraged entirely around difference. And so when we stay very, very focused on what we're trying to do, then impulses that lead towards what we're not trying to do appear as more apparent to our perception. So you're basically cheating, in a certain sense, by making the distractions more obvious. I mean, at that level, you will probably question whether or not they were always just really obvious and I wasn't paying any fucking attention, because they seem really obvious. You know, like, it honestly can get a little bit fucking annoying, but it's better kind of annoying, I will assure you of that, because you realize, like, okay, right here, this thing's happening, and if I choose to go down this path, I'm taking energy, or I'm at least not applying it to what I'm trying to do as effectively as I could be. Am I actually going to go down this path? You know, and it's better to make an aware, conscious choice than to just like end up in places where you're like, how the fuck did my life end up like this? So if you stay focused all the time and you're like actually choosing and discerning your future, rather than buying into any kind of excuses why I can't do that, I'm not allowed to do that, it's impossible to do that, none of that. Like, just try and do it and give it your all. If you completely commit to these things, you will likely find that you're capable of significantly more than you thought you were capable of on pretty much every single level. And especially if you're anywhere near the age group of me, or if you're younger than me too, then realize, like, with my age group, it's our fucking time. Like, this is the time to shine, ladies and gentlemen. If you came from my age group, the most effect that we're ever going to have on the world is going to transpire in the next 20 years. We are coming into the place where chronologically we are functionally the ruling class. It's time to fucking step up. I don't care if you've been like, a wolf hiding underneath the sheep's clothing all the time, or whatever way you want to take that metaphor. Like, now's the time to be something different and be the change that you want to see in the world, because we're moving into the place where we have the loudest voice. And to those that are younger than me, recognize, like, to look at the people right now that are willing to stick their neck out for actual culture, and recognize the value of it. Recognize you are the future that we work for. You are our future. We are the future of the people that came before us. And those of us who actually are really doing the right thing, in my opinion, we really appreciate that. And I hope that those who are younger than me, you appreciate that as well. I'm not saying appreciate me. Maybe I'm just some fucking idiot on the internet, but these people are out there. And realize, like, we're either the now or we're the future. The shit that we spend a lot of time complaining about, it's the fucking past, boys. Look around you. This is not the same as it was. 1990 was not like this. 2000 was not like this. Shit, 2010 was not like this. This is very different. The time is now. The change is here. What is it going to fucking change into? And realize that, like, if you understand yourself to be powerful, if you've like done a bunch of psychedelics and you've come to really know yourself, or you're deep into the meditation, or you've been doing this for 30 fucking years, or I don't know, maybe you were birthed into this world as just some kind of omnipotent sage. I don't really fucking care. You look at yourself and you realize you have immense capability to generate change inside of a morphogenetic consciousness that you understand that you have an access to that isn't normal. That means you have a responsibility to make sure that that thing goes in the right direction. Stop fucking around. It was fun fucking around and shit, right? Like, it was a good time. But come on. If we go to the right place, we get to fuck around forever. Like, just keep your mind focused on the right thing. I'm not going to sit here and fucking preach to you about what it is. You know what it fucking is. If you're who I'm talking to, you know exactly who it is. You've always known all along. You'll always know forever. You don't need to hear that shit from me. And if you're that person, stop fucking around. No more bullshit, dude. Stop fucking around. This is quite possibly the greatest time that has ever existed in history that is currently recorded. What do you want them to write about you? What story are you writing of the future? I spent a long time in my life studying great authors and great thinkers so that when a time like this came, I could write a very interesting story. And I don't know what the entire world is going to, but I urge you to go to the place of your dreams because I know that I am at least doing everything that I possibly can to ensure that the optimal timeline is obtained and substantiated for at least one person. And I would encourage you all to join me there as well. Perhaps your optimal timeline is not exactly the same as mine, but it's close enough that we can hang out and do silly shit in the same place. And I would enjoy that because I'm tired of doing the kind of silly shit that we've been doing here. So, like, you have support. The team is out here. Operators are operational. I've been here my whole life doing the same thing. My entire life raised me for something exactly like this. I mean, I already knew this was coming a long time ago. Yeah, that's a, you know, if the next Hug Your Conspiracy Theorist Day, I'll probably get a lot of phone calls because I've been doing that a long time. So, you're not alone, man. Believe it is possible. Don't allow this fucking confusion to convince you. Otherwise, this place doesn't know shit. Have you ever seen a fish when you pull it out of the river? It flops around like a fucking idiot, goes all crazy, gets stuff everywhere. It's all over the place. Sometimes it even makes it back into the river if the fisherman's unconscious enough. This is a fish flopping around. It's already dead. It's already dead. We killed it. We killed it before. It's not about that. It's about creating now. The war is over. The war is done. There's no more war. Now we make the utopia that we were fighting the war to be able to create. Please, please, please help. We cannot make the utopia without every single thing's input on exactly what that's supposed to be. Realize the people who I believe are at the cutting edge of this, we do not care what it looks like. We shift things. That's it. I don't fucking care where it goes. How do you think the world got here like this? Full disclosure, people like me and probably literally my energetic signature helped get it here. I am a disruptor. I don't care where it goes. The utopia that you create, if it is inside of a cycle, when the cycle comes back around, I will be there to disrupt it. I like change. But right now, we've been trying to get somewhere for a very long time. We're at that little moment. I don't know what time is completely. I have my own conceptualizations. But now's the time, man. It ain't going to get riper than this. You know how much more likely somebody is to believe whatever your theory is of the future right now than any other time in any remotely recent history? And by remotely recent, I mean 4,000 years or something, probably longer. So a very long time. Yeah, it's very special. We're at the climax of the book, the most exciting time, the time where everything conjugates together and no one has any idea what's going on. And then something pops out the other side. Probably infinite things pop out the other side. I'm not even saying that the other ones won't happen. I'm saying I encourage you to navigate towards an optimal timeline of your choosing. If focus will take you places you want to get in your human life, I assure you it will take you places you want to get in your human experience. So, yeah. Yeah, really, really. The fucking around times, best concerts, music cheap, going to the beach, drive-ins, drinking, getting pulled over. All this stuff, man. If you didn't get to live that life in this previous reality that we're transitioning from right now, it was very cool. But that place is still out there. We can move to this place, whether it be physically or metaphysically, or we move the entire reality, or we just move our perception. It really doesn't matter. I know everything that I say can be taken as some kind of airy-fairy thing. As I can just focus on whatever reality I want and I can get there. And if you think that, then you think I'm ridiculous. And I appreciate you for thinking that, but you are wrong. So, sorry. Signs point to the fact that we can, in fact, navigate ourselves to wherever we want. If you do not see the signs, you just have not seen them yet. You will see them. It is all coming forth. So, we out here. I encourage you to be out here with us. I think many of the people that watch this channel are, and I appreciate all of you for what it is that you do. I don't care how you do it, why you do it, nothing. I appreciate the fact that you're doing, and you're doing with your soul. If you are doing with your soul, I support you, and you have my full support, and you will always have it. So, nevertheless, that's basically my rant for tonight. Stop fucking around. Focus on the reality that you want. If you can't remember which one that is, the old stop, check which one feels better. Go that way. That's all you really need at the end of the day. As long as you get the reward of feeling good in the moment, you won't really care about the rest of this shit. And if you don't believe that, then just, envision yourself having like recently fallen deeply in love with the person of your dreams. Maybe that's yourself. Maybe that's a male. Maybe that's a female. Maybe it's a fucking alien or a sloth. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. But you've fallen in love with this thing, and you're in a moment just there, just you and it, and you're just experiencing that moment of like, this is beyond my imagination. In that moment, you do not give a fuck about all the things that you really like have problems with in the moment. So just don't, man. You're not gonna get to that place by being focused on problems all the time. So, solutions, you make them. Be focused. I love you. A lot of things love you. There is significantly. Love's what keeps this thing together, boys and girls. Love is a synonym for coherence. You are most definitely love. You're fucking swaddled and nurtured in it all the time. Sometimes you just perceive it as hardship. Have a good night.